Oh,
Hi, welcome. Hi, Stuart.
hello.
How are you?
All good, thank you. All good, all good. Enjoying this little bit of sunshine we've got at the moment here. Nice little bit of warmth as well. So all
It's
good.
getting
Makes
there,
makes a
isn't it?
massive difference. Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And we're joined today by Kate. Hi, Kate.
Okay,
Hi
you're right.
Emma, hello Stuart.
Kate is from Southends. I don't think I badgered you into joining us, really.
Not too much arm twisting.
No. So she owns Footfall's Canine Hydro and is a physio as well. And I wanted Kate to join us after our conversation, Stuart, about whether we're doing too much too soon with our young dogs.
Yeah, 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 definitely. It was just something. It was one of those things that popped up on social media, wasn't it? That we saw, and there's a few questions on young sort of competing dogs, and so almost how much would they have had to do to get to the level they're at that age they've got, and is it too early? When is it too early to start training for certain bits and pieces? And obviously the dog's um, physical makeup and stuff. How early is too early, or when should we start things? I think that was what we were trying to get at,
What we,
and we
yeah.
weren't expert enough to make a firm decision. We just went, we don't know.
And so we brought Kate on board. So from your point of view, Kate, from a young dog point of view, we'll think about agility, and maybe I know you deal with flyball and all other sorts of sports dogs. When is too soon too soon?
So
From
this
a
is
physical point of
actually
view.
a really controversial subject, to be honest, and a lot of vets are sort of having quite a lot of conversation, and there's quite a lot of research being done at the moment because, even just for your general kind of pet dogs, that kind of 5 minutes of exercise per month of age, a lot of vets are now saying, actually, no, just be sensible with your animal. So this is a massively controversial subject. I think you have to take into account your breed mix or your pure breed and what conditions are actually common with those. Unfortunately, with spaniels, there's lots of issue with elbows. So actually you don't want to be doing too much jumping, too much, if we're talking about agility, the weaves and things like that before those growth plates are definitely shut. So I think you have to be very specific on the sport that you're looking at and the breed that you have. If you chuck in, for example, the flyball guys, it's really common to see quite a bigger mix of dog. Your growth plates could take up until potentially 18 months to close.
Yeah.
So it's a really difficult one. I think, I personally, when I speak to my clients that are doing sports, we do a lot of straight line work, a lot of flat work until at least a year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's my kind of advice to these owners and these guys that want to go into sports. You can be doing basic core work, basic body awareness, as games with these puppies at kind of 12, 13 weeks old, just for a few minutes a day. Don't overload their body, but you can still get the training in for the sport that you want to do.
Yeah.
And there is no way, is there, apart from X-ray, of telling whether the growth plates are actually closed or not closed?
No, we are taking an educated guess based on kind of previous X-rays, previous studies that we've been able to gather information from. The only way to absolutely 100% guarantee that those growth plates are shut is an X-ray.
Okay.
Yeah.
And like from a size of dog point of view, I know that sort of makes a difference as well, doesn't it? So like potentially the smaller the dog, the quicker the growth plates are, or does that not really make any difference?
They think so. They think the smaller the dog. So, for example, if you have a working Cocker Spaniel and a Rottweiler, the chances are that you would put your house on the fact that the Cocker Spaniel's growth plates were closed at a year.
Yeah.
If it's a large Rottie, you may want to edge towards 18 months.
Yeah.
But it does, and that's kind of a guesstimate. That's kind of going a bit anecdotally. It's going off other studies that people have been able to review the X-rays from.
Yeah.
It's what's really, really interesting, but it's going to take a while for the research to come out, is there is research going on at the moment about different breeds, different age groups, and using the gait analysis treadmill. And there's a big piece of research being done, but I don't think we're going to see any results from that for probably about 2 years, because they're actually going to study them from basically 4 months old and put them on the gait analysis, which is a machine that does weight bearing, stride length, pressure through each limb. And they're going to do that basically every month until the dog is 2, across a variety of breeds.
Okay.
And that's going to give us so much more information, because it just isn't there. So I think we end up kind of, and quite rightly so, especially if we're looking for a dog to have a long sporting career, we err on the side of caution. You know, actually, is another couple of months of just putting in your foundation work actually going to cause you any problems in the long run? Probably not.
Yeah.
You know, the stronger their core is, the stronger their limb awareness is, the better you're going to have them when they come to do their full-blown agility, fly ball, canicross, bike during, you know, whatever sport you really want to choose to go into. Get your basics right, and hopefully you won't be seeing me.
Yeah. Then you'll all be out of business then. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't think that'll ever happen.
But I think what we have, especially in agility, obviously because we're from more of an agility background than anywhere else, when we got an organisation a little bit like the Kennel Club, for instance, that put like a guideline or a rule on that you're not supposed to be training your dogs for agility until they're 12 months old, and you're not allowed to compete until they're 18 months old, which is pretty good in it, like from what you're saying, which is a good sort of gauge on what's good. But I think the problem is with that, with the 18 months is in agility, I know a lot of us, or a lot of them out there, we try and get our dogs ready for 18 months. You know, so 18 months and everybody's entering their first show and they're like, right, we've got to go in there and get this. So we sometimes feel that 12 months to 18 months, everybody's hammering the dogs, let's get everything ready, then at 18 months we can compete. So I think sometimes although it's good to have a guideline, I think having an 18-month ticket on it, everybody sort of goes, right, we're going for that time, instead of looking at the dog, like you say, looking at your dog and thinking, right, this dog's not going to be ready at 18 months. I'm happy with that. I need to just stretch it out for maybe 20, 24 months and then see where we're at from that. So I think we do struggle a little bit, obviously, from an educational point of view. Somebody like the Kennel Club does come along and say, right, these are the guidelines. And most people, because the Kennel Club have been around for a long, long time, and they've, you know, most people will take that as right, I'm allowed to do this now, instead of, you know.
Yeah, I think so. And I think luckily it is really starting to change. But I also think, you know, we also had a lot of people who were weekend warriors with their dogs and weren't putting in the Monday to Friday exercise that was needed, you know, who weren't thinking about how do I keep them fit and healthy the rest of the time. I think there's been a massive change in the sporting community to actually, you know, get involved with massage therapists, physios, hydrotherapy, you know, other aspects. And, you know, these practitioners will be able to help with advice like that. I think, you know, use people whose hands-on skills can also help you assess whether this dog is, you know, musculature mature, you know, go to, you know, you guys who have got experience as agility trainers and, you know, good dog trainers and good dog behaviorists as well, who know, you know, more about the whole dog to make sure that dog is ready. I think you're right. I think sometimes when there is a right bang 18 months off we go, everyone's kind of on the starting blocks, and like you say, their dog's got to be ready no matter what. But I think with what I'm seeing is that people are starting to shift to actually want longevity of a career of a dog, and not kind of hammer them so much that you retire them 2-3 years down the line because they're broken. People want to be able to go into older lengths of competing with their animals, which is fantastic.
Fabulous news, isn't it? And is there any truth in kind of, we're talking about growth plates, but obviously the muscular and the tendons and the ligaments, presumably like humans, if you can, agility training is a lot of repetitive work, as is flyball and everything, so presumably you can have repetitive strain type injuries. And is there we're saying that it's just because of the growth plates. So I often say to people, no, you know, we want to make sure that the tendons and ligaments are strong enough and everything like that. Am I right in saying that? Or is it?
Absolutely. Like the whole musculoskeletal system has to mature. So there isn't enough research on specifically kind of muscles and tendons like there are on growth plates, because that would probably involve, you know, much more in-depth imaging and potentially, you know, never what you want to do. It's not ethical, but almost looking at kind of biopsies to kind of actually see about fiber density and bits and pieces. I think what's important, and I think it's really easy to forget, I was actually teaching last week and speaking to all the students about tissue healing, is a year after tendon damage, it could only be at 70%. A year after you have damaged a tendon. Ligaments and tendons, most likely after a year, are not at 100% recovery after a year of the injury. You know, and we don't talk about this. You know, your vets and bits and pieces, everyone talks about muscle injury. You know, if you break a bone, they go 8 to 12 weeks, you know, fine, off you go. But they don't talk about these little tweaks, these tears, because it's repetitive actions that we're doing. You know, and we're seeing a big increase in piriformis injuries, psoas injuries with our sports dogs, and especially our young active spaniels. As no offense meant to anybody, but your crazy bouncy dogs, you know, they're fab. This is why they do the sport. They love it. They have the drive, but they are constantly bouncing, even on a normal walk at home when they're not working. You know, potentially giving your dog until 24 months to fully skeletally mature may mean that you actually get longevity of a season, and that you're not out with these little tweaks and these little niggles, you know. I mean, we worked a long time, Emma, didn't we, trying to get these little niggles right, and, you know, really working on kind of soft tissue work and straight line performance, and looking at different exercise patterns and working our therapy around when you were competing and off days. And, you know, we are now much more treating the canine athlete like we are human athletes. And that's super important, to get the recovery days right as well, because we don't have the research to back up like we do with humans. We are transferring it over, and that's the closest we can get. So yeah, the skeletal matureness is one that's super important, but one that's really difficult to put a ballpark on.
Yeah, and years ago they used to say that animals, I worked alongside horses for a long time, that we should give sort of our dogs and our horses at least a month off of competitive training. Is that still the case? And if so, how, you know, presumably you need to bring them back slowly into work, etc.
I don't think I would necessarily say turn out for a month. And I think what you should be doing is your core foundation work in between times. So yeah, okay, don't run them every weekend for a month. Give them a month off the actual competitive side. Doesn't mean you have to give them a month off training. And people, I think, you know, don't give enough to the basics that they should be doing. They train their dog and then just think they can turn them out every weekend and they can compete. You know, actually, no, you should be training. You wouldn't turn up and play a sport yourself and not train. You also wouldn't go to the gym and not give yourself a rest day. And this applies to you know, your pet dogs as well. I truly believe they should have rest days. I don't believe that anybody should do the same activity every single day. You know, we have to give the muscles and everything time to repair, and the body time to heal, because when you train, you damage muscle fibers. That's how muscles get bigger. You know, so we have to give the body time to repair. If they are healthy and they have no underlying condition, I'm not sure I would necessarily be of the belief to turn out for a month. I think maybe, as I said, don't do your competitions for a month, but your training should still be there, should still be happening, because otherwise you then waste maybe another month bringing them back up to the level they were at. Whereas if you change maybe their training for a month, look at a different aspect or focus on a different way, or, you know, they maybe swim once a month, but for that month actually you're going to swim them every week, so they're still getting fitness but in a weight with a lot less weight bearing going on, or the underwater treadmill or something like that. Or if you have a treadmill at home, you know, I think you should vary the activity but not necessarily the intensity if they're a fit, healthy dog.
And also taking a little bit of time to use their brains a little bit as well. So not necessarily doing their physical activity, getting them doing a little bit more of their thinking part to do it as well. Because I think if we get them thinking a little bit more, that also is going to help them physically, because they're a little bit more not sensible, but they can think things through. So they're not just flying at things at 100 miles an hour without thinking, if we can start to get them to work things out themselves, work puzzles out, work things out, but then when we are training them, they're more likely to work it out faster, which means they're not taking so long to train, which means they're not damaging themselves so much.
Absolutely. I think not enough is given to, you know, your brain training and as you say, like your puzzle games and bits and pieces, working things out, but also, you know, your slow, controlled movements, making sure that everything isn't a million miles an hour, making sure that actually, yeah, okay, your dog can run around in agility course. Can it walk in a straight line and actually control those muscles? And
you know, had a conversation when I was getting Kippy ready for the trials. He didn't know how to walk slowly and properly and engage all of his muscles, and you know, and I'd like to think that I'd done lots of core with him and lots of body awareness, but he just couldn't do it. It was 0 or 100.
Yeah. And I think that's really, really common for dogs that make fantastic sporting dogs. They have to have that kind of 0 to 100.
Yeah.
But you can challenge them really easily by going, okay, now we're going to sit at 10. And they go, oh my God, I can't do this. I don't know where my limbs are. I don't know what I'm doing. You know, so you can tap into such a resource by actually just varying your training and your speed and what you're asking them to do. You know, ask some of the dogs to do very simple, slow, controlled exercises. They'll be asleep for 5 hours.
Yeah.
Because they have no concept of slowing down. But it's such valuable training. You know, none of the top athletes in the world as humans are doing the same training every week. Or, you know, they're doing something different. And we have to start incorporating that into our canine athletes for sure.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I think I agree. I can see that with my dogs. To be fair, getting them to slow things down. You can see it fit, like not necessarily mentally, but physically. They just really struggle with that sort of factor of almost putting one foot in front of the other. Is just it's not what we do, you know. And then when you do it, like you say, 10 minutes of that, and they're out for 2 or 3 hours. Then they're like, well, I'm done.
Yeah,
that took all the energy.
You know, and that's wonderful training, and that's training the muscle in a different way. It's strengthening in a different way. It's allowing coordination to form in a different way. You know, that's brilliant, and it's taking you 10 minutes.
Yeah, because I know with my competing dog at the moment, we always laugh about him. Like on an agility course, he looks absolutely phenomenal. He looks smooth, control. Everything about him is really cool. In the house, he's the clumsiest dog in the world.
Yeah. Oh, and
general everyday life, if you can hear something breaking in the house, it's usually him.
Oh yeah, I spend most of my life going, I'm not watching them walk.
Yeah.
I'll just watch them run. I definitely have done that with your guys, you know, we go, don't show me footage of the walking, don't slow it down.
Yeah.
You know, but we got Kip to a fabulous position.
Yeah.
You know, just by slowing him down. And again, a lot of my sports guys that come to me, I go, right, we're going to slow you down. And they go, what? Yeah. No, he's a sports dog. He goes fast. And I go, yeah, but we need to slow it down. We need to engage that core on a different level as well. And that stability, you know.
And just going for that, and just going for those like simple lead walks, road walks and stuff.
Absolutely.
Instead of just tearing around the field all day, or, you know, around the woods and stuff. Just go for a 10-minute walk down the road on the lead is sometimes as much as an hour's run down the field.
If not, I think.
I was going to say, I'll bow to Emma's higher power hill, but if you can actually get your dog to walk to heel and listen to you as part of your training and your engagement, that's got to be really positive for your bond as well, surely. Like to have that interaction on a lead walk. As I said, I bow to the higher powers here on the dog training side of it.
And what about warming up, Kate? What sort of things should we be doing? You know, we've all got our own ideas of what we should be doing warming up before a competition, maybe. So we've gone to a show. Lots of the times at the moment we're struggling with mud and we can't get onto grass to warm them up. What sort of things should we actually be doing to warm them up?
So I think, you know, if you can't have an exercise area that's safe, like you say, with grass and with slipping and bits and pieces, you know, I would definitely be looking at, you know, simple things. Make sure your vans are warm, guys. You know, we seem to forget how cold they get. Make sure you've got enough extra bedding. Make sure you've got a coat that's covering the muscle groups that you need. The amount of times that I've seen dogs pulled out of vans with no coats on, with nothing, and then just let loose on a course. You know, even if you don't have time to actually physically take them for an actual run around somewhere to warm the muscles up, please at least have enough coats in the van that they're warm while they're sat in there. It's difficult because you guys sometimes have multiple dogs that you're running as well, and I'm very aware of that you haven't just got one dog necessarily, that there isn't always that time, because you don't control when the dogs are put out. You don't get to control your groups, you don't get to control your timings. So having, again, depending on the rules of what you are allowed to use and not allowed to use, some of our flyball guys, we will use like a warm kind of menthol, kind of like, it's got no chemicals in it or anything, like a natural product to kind of put some heat into the muscles. Obviously every competition has its own rules, and I'm not getting into that one. So please check what you're allowed to use and not allowed to use. I'm not getting in trouble here. And then I would take them for a walk if possible, just 5-10 minutes, just let them actually start to stretch their legs. But again, you get most sporting dogs out of the van at their competition and they're on 2 back feet and howling, ready to go, so it's very difficult to say go for a nice controlled warm-up, because they're going, but my agility course is over here and I know what I've got to do, mum and dad, this is my job and I'm gonna jump and be on my back legs.
Which actually, if you've taught them to heel work nicely, then
you might be able to bring that down. Perfect. But you don't want anything too explosive. You want that explosive speed as you go. So I would just say literally please excuse my coughing.
Thanks.
5 minutes max, just very gentle, loosely, just get them done, give them a stretch. Also give them learn how to do your passive range of motion and your stretching. Find a therapist if you're not sure, because you will pick up if there is a problem before you even run that dog. And you could save yourself huge amounts of injury woes in the future if you were to pull your dog out of the van, take them for their little walk, let them have their toilet and go, right, I'm just going to give you a stretch, just a little bit of a massage, warm up these muscles. And you can suddenly go, you don't feel right. I'm not going to wait for you to fall off something or fall out of the weaves before I run you, So I think warming up is difficult, especially at a competition, for any sports dog. I think a 5 minute, probably 10 minutes if you can, before 10-15 minutes before your competition time if possible, get them out for their toilet, watch them walk, a bit of gentle massage, get the blood flowing. Hopefully they've been warm enough in the van. I think it's going to be your cool down that's probably going to be more effective for you guys to be injury prevention. And again, that's really difficult, and maybe something that actually sometimes the organisers need to think about, because you can end up having to shove one dog in a van and get the next one straight out as well. So I think sometimes, if possible, there needs to be a little bit more communication to actually allow you to safely cool your dog down and then put them away.
That's a really good point, actually, isn't it?
So do you think, Kate, as well, that if you give you, let's say we get to a competition at sort of 7:30 in the morning, we're running at 8:30, whatever that is, we get all parked up and do whatever. Is it like the fact that you can do let's say a good 25-minute warm up before you start, you get the dogs really warmed up, get everything you need to do, and then a case of just topping up before each run? We sometimes get 3 or 4 runs a day, so then just before the next run we just have a 5 or 10 minute top up. And then,
I think that's absolutely fine. I think especially as well, if your vans are kitted out, they're in their coats if that's what's needed in this weather, or the damp or the cold that we've had. I mean, it's just been miserable, and I would rather, most likely, you guys had them in the right coats, we're doing some massage, we're doing some stretching and warming them up in that way, than then going hell for leather in a muddy field and hurting themselves because their brains are so excited because they're there to do a job. So I think knowing your dog, the area that you're competing in, the setup of how the competition is being run, and also have you got to walk 15 minutes to get to where you're running? Where have they parked you guys? Where have they parked your vans? I think taking all of that into consideration and planning it, because if you warm your dog up and then have got to walk it 10 minutes to get to the start line, that also has to be taken into consideration as part of your warm-up, because you are still moving them and warming them as you're walking them through. So I think life isn't made easy for you guys with sporting dogs.
No, I mean we're quite. When we go away for a show, whether we're camping there or driving there, we actually prefer to be, like you say, 5 or 10 minutes away.
Yeah.
We actually prefer a walk. I know
Yeah.
it's sometimes difficult when you're you're on the line. You think, shit, I've got to run, got to get my dog. I've got 10 minutes to get there, 10 minutes to get back.
Yeah.
But sometimes when we're camping there, we prefer to be at caravans a little bit further away because we get the best of both worlds. We get to warm them up, like you say. We get to walk to the rings.
Yeah.
We jog to the rings, whatever you need to do just to get a little bit warmed up. But also afterwards, they get that downtime as well.
Yeah.
You get to relax. They're away from the excitement of the rings and the exercise area and things like that. So I think the downtime afterwards, like I say, when you've had your cool down, actually putting your dogs away for a minute and just going, right, you're going in there, lie down for 20 minutes, half an hour away from everybody else, just to have a cool down. So do you think that that's after your cool down, do you think it's a good idea to put your dogs away, completely away from everything? And
yeah, I think so. I think you need to let their brain switch off as well. I think as long as you can have that cool down period, I think, my big concern is, unfortunately some people don't get that time. Literally the dog comes off the course, they're away, and they've got to run and get the next one, and they haven't had the 10-15 minutes to slowly walk them down, bring their heart rate down, make sure they don't stiffen up. So yeah, I think that's hugely important. And then when you get back to them of an evening, most people will then bring them out for the evening, and they'll have their dinner and watch them all walk around of the evening as well. If they're well behaved, they might actually be out in your garden with your caravan that you've put up. But and then they get that kind of just mooch around, which I think is so valuable in between the competitions, just to kind of be normal of an evening. But yeah, I think it is part of it. And I think training them to cool down and then go away, and actually putting in that training as a youngster, you can be working on that with your dog from 12 weeks when you get them home, that they do a little bit and then they go away. And if that's what your dog is used to, then that's absolutely fine. But that's some of the things that I don't think people think about with training, if that makes sense. And all of that is massively important for competition. If your dog all of a sudden doesn't really get used to cooling down and then being in a crate or in your van or in your car or whatever setup you have, you're then creating stress, which releases hormones, which has an effect on tissue, which has an effect on body systems. So yes, okay, you might be able to compete to your 18 months, but you can be working on so many factors that will limit your injury risk from the time they're tiny puppies. And I don't know that people make some of the connections between stress level, excitement level, endorphin release, hormone releases that are happening. But even that's fantastic if you can get that trained and get them used to it.
There's a lot of things that I do. I'm assuming that Emma does the same as well, especially with the foundation training that we do with, like you say, the younger dogs, the puppies. A lot of the stuff that I do is a lot more about that sort of self-control, sort of relaxed working. So just gentle circle work, which is a little bit like heel work sort of stuff. Sitting on a bed and watching what everybody else is doing without screaming and jumping around everywhere. Being able to play with a toy around everybody else, but then let the toy go and relax and stuff. So I do quite a lot of that with
arousal,
so get them a little bit excited and then just go, right, now we need to chill out for a little bit while another dog's doing their little thing. But I don't necessarily spend loads of times getting my dog to like scream from one end of an arena to the other on the end of a toy just to see how fast they can move or how excited they get. I tend to start from the very bottom and just go, right, let's just see whether they can sit still in this environment, and then we can build up their level as much as we can, and then hopefully by the time they get to 18 months, 2 years, they can control themselves around the agility, so that then hopefully, like you say, mentally and physically will be beneficial to them when they actually start competing. I'm quite lucky. I quite like the fact with my dogs, I'm pretty with all of my dogs actually around the agility rings, they're not that bothered. To be fair, when you walk, you can walk in between the rings, but they're not that bothered about what's going on. It's not until you get them in behind the ring rope and you take their collar off, and then they go, okay, now we're going to do what we're going to do. And I believe that's so much more beneficial to me than my dog being able to scream on the end of a toy. I think. you know.
And what about the day after? So we've done our warm up and we've done our warm down on that night. I know that I always suffer with cramp the day after, which means that I need to look after myself, and I tend to look after my dogs a lot the day after. What sort of exercise should we be doing, or should we be doing nothing?
So I always think you should do something. It should be low intensity, but they need to get moving. They will, especially if they've raced really hard, just as we have, you know, they can't tell us, but I'll put money on the fact that they get DOMs like we do.
Yeah.
You know, I have a lot of our sports guys that will book for a swim. Just very gentle, not thinking about fitness, but some massage in the water, you know, a swim, you know, some calm time with massage techniques. I don't tend to ever treadmill them. I tend to always go for the weightlessness of a swim if they're coming in for hydro, or if they want to come for massage. I know a lot of my clients will have like biomagnetic beds or PMF mats, and or the boxes, and they'll use them the day after or the evening they get home as well for improved blood flow, relaxation, things like that. So yeah, I think they should do something, take them to a field and let them be off lead to mooch, as long as they're not going to go absolutely crazy and, you know, do the zoomies, or no, pick the dogs that go out together, that will just keep them moving, get them up, get them going for, you know, a nice lead walk, or, you know, off lead if you know that it's a controlled area. But yeah, I think definitely the day after they need to be up and doing something.
Even if it's like a little bit of sort of foraging around the garden, if you've got a big enough garden, just
you know, or, you know, like find it games, or, you know, you could do that in the garden for them, even if it's not the biggest garden. You know, a bit of brain stimulation, but get them just up and about and moving, getting those joints moving, synovial fluid pumping, blood pumping to help with any muscle repair. If there's any soreness, you know, getting that blood flow will always be beneficial.
Yeah, perfect.
As my PT would say, motion is lotion.
Yeah. And just going completely gone off it then, off what I was going to say then. Yeah, we're going back to quickly about when Emma said about having time off, like having a month off or that sort of stuff. So when I train my dogs, generally, I don't generally train so intense, if that makes sense. So when we're competing or training, I maybe sort of one or two, maybe one session a week where we go really sort of high intensity just to see where we're at. And then the rest of it, then I might spend 2 or 3 days just really sort of low level, sort of 50 to 80% training at that point. And then at competitions, I really sort of pick and choose. I don't do the 4 runs that are offered to me. I might only do 2 of them. Whereas a lot of people are like, train 3 or 4 days a week, super intense, compete, do all my 4 runs this weekend at whatever it is. And then they have a month off. Whereas I generally try and train throughout the year, and then don't really have the time off. I just sort of like go, I don't really need to give them that much time off, because we don't train or compete hard enough, that I think, enough of the time to make it a too much of an issue. Is there a difference in that compared to breaking, or do we just go whatever suits you best?
I would guarantee the research isn't there for the animals, if I'm totally honest. I would say if we had a human trainer on for any sport, you know, they would probably tell you maintaining an equal level of fitness and training, you know, with allowing those, like you said, those peaks and troughs. So you're at like, you know, 50 to 70% most of the week, but then can push up to your 90%. Is probably much more healthy for your body. You know, rather than going, right, we're going to train at 90% 3 days a week, and then you're going to have 4 days off. You know, you need to find your fitness level and keep them there, but know that you can get those peaks and troughs. That's where you're going to have the least amount of injury. You know, if you are comfortable and fit running at 60-70% of your max most of the time, you know, to then push to that 90-100% is not actually going to be that big a leap. Whereas if you're doing this, that's when you're going to run the risk of injury. I think you are always stronger and fitter and healthier if you're doing a sort of straight line with a slope rather than those peaks and troughs.
That makes sense.
Yeah, and I think if you were to look at human studies into, you know, injury prevention, it would absolutely back up that. And they are exactly the same. Their muscles, their makeup, you know, are exactly the same. And, you know, dogs are here to engage and work. You know, and we pick the breeds we pick for the sports we pick because they want to be doing this, you know. So keeping them engaged and fit is always going to be better than then just like turning them out for a month. Their brains won't cope either, and that's when they do something stupid because their brains have left the building. So they zoom in and they forget that actually they need to go up the A-frame or down the seesaw and not off the side or hit the tunnel at a funny angle. You know, keeping that regular training and that muscle memory going, for me, I can only see that as a benefit.
Excellent.
I think we'll end on that bit there. I can see that you're struggling a little bit, Kate, as well. I know you're not feeling. No, it's fine. You're not feeling too well. It's good.
Joining us. Poor Kate's got a cold and a cough, so thanks for joining us.
Absolutely brilliant. Really, really good. Really enjoyed it.
Excellent. Thanks a lot. We'll see you all later.
We'll see you all later. Right. See you later. Bye.